Landman Season 1's finale had the satisfying death that Taylor Sheridan's Yellowstone Season 5 was missing. The ending of Landman Season 1 was able to beat Taylor Sheridan's Yellowstone Season 5, Part 2 in one major way, through the death of one major character. Even though it marked the end of one of the biggest TV sensations in recent memory, the ending of Yellowstone didn't fully live up to the hype. Many longtime fans found fault with Yellowstone Season 5, Part 2, and one of the most common criticisms was how it handled the deaths of its major characters. None of the show's major deaths were very satisfying, but Landman had no such problem. In contrast to Yellowstone, the ending of Landman Season 1 was one of the Taylor Sheridan show's stronger episodes. It moved quite a few of its converging stories forward, shone a spotlight on some underutilized characters, and left the door wide open for Landman Season 2. One of the things it did best, however, was also exactly what Yellowstone did worse. Landman handled the death of one of its major characters significantly better than Yellowstone did, and it may be proof that Landman could be Taylor Sheridan's next major TV franchise. There were 3 major deaths in Yellowstone Season 5, Part 2, John Dutton IA, Kevin Costner, Jamie Wiz Bentley, and Sarah Atwood, Dawn Olivieri. Unfortunately, all 3 of their deaths were underwhelming in their own ways. John's death was rushed after Kevin Costner left Yellowstone, so he simply died in his sleep instead of going out fighting. Meanwhile, Jamie's fate in Yellowstone and Beth's revenge was anticlimactically jammed into the end of the show despite being built up for multiple seasons. Even Sarah's death was more of a shock twist than a fitting end to a villain of her stature. After making fans wait years to see how all of Yellowstone's intriguing plots could be satisfyingly resolved, the show floundered at the last minute. Instead of giving John a warrior's death, he was quickly and messily disposed of to make room for other characters. Instead of giving Beth the satisfaction of killing Jamie, Rip burst in to kill him in mere moments. Instead of letting Sarah stew in her failure to tear down the Duttons, she was shot dead right as she started to realize she was in danger. All of them were lacking in some way, but Taylor Sheridan got to fix those mistakes. Even though all of Yellowstone Season 5, Part 2's major deaths left something to be desired, Landman proved that Taylor Sheridan can still nail a character's demise. When Monty Miller, John Hamm, finally died in Landman, his death didn't feel rushed or anticlimactic. A lot of that was due to Demi Moore and Billy Bob Thornton's tremendous acting, as they were able to convey all the grief and tragedy that Monty's death entailed. For instance, when Cammy fully climbs on top of Monty's lifeless body and begins weeping, she gave the moment an almost uncomfortably heartbreaking quality. The biggest reason Monty's death felt so much more satisfying than John, Jamie, or Sarah's was because Landman did a lot more to earn it than Yellowstone did. Landman spent the entire season foreshadowing Monty's heart problems and establishing how important he was not only to MTEX, but also as a friend and husband. Then when the moment came, Landman took its time and let the emotions surrounding Monty's death stew for a while. On top of that, Monty's death opened new opportunities for the rest of the cast of Landman's stories, and the entire ordeal worked much better than Yellowstone's major deaths. It's clear that Taylor Sheridan was able to get Landman Season 1 over the finish line better than he could manage with Yellowstone Season 5, Part 2. In fact, now that Yellowstone is over, many viewers may be wondering whether Landman could be the replacement show Sheridan has been searching for. It certainly has a lot going for it. Landman has a star-studded cast, an extremely strong first season that opened a wealth of new possibilities for Season 2, and a story that has enough steam to get to a satisfying conclusion. If Sheridan plays his cards right, Landman could very well be his new franchise. That being said, Landman still has a long way to go before it can really be considered a Yellowstone replacement. One of the biggest advantages Yellowstone had was how easily it could spawn spin-off shows. Any moment in the nearly 150 years that the Dutton family owned the ranch made for a great premise, and it was extremely easy to create a new ancestor that had their own period-specific problems to overcome. Landman could conceivably do a spin-off about Cooper, Jacob Loveland, trying to become an oilman himself, but other than that, there's not much room for growth yet. For the most part, however, the only thing that will definitively answer whether Landman is the new Yellowstone is time. In a few years, Landman may introduce enough new characters and interesting parts of Tommy's backstory to warrant spin-off shows, and it may grow into a franchise unto itself. For now, though, it's impossible to say what the future holds, or if Landman can maintain the momentum its first season built up. On the bright side, no matter what happens, Landman can still be proud that it beat Yellowstone in one key area. Taylor Sheridan's Landman burst onto the scene like a well-oiled machine, capturing the same rugged spirit of his Yellowstone universe while carving out its own distinct identity. As the dust settled on its gripping Season 1 finale, fans couldn't help but draw comparisons to Yellowstone Season 5, a series equally entrenched in Sheridan's signature style, but criticized for withholding the cathartic payoff viewers were craving. Where Yellowstone hesitated, Landman delivered, closing its debut season with a death so satisfying, so narratively earned, that it underscored the flaws in Yellowstone's faltering momentum. At the center of Landman's finale was the long-simmering rivalry between Buck Lancaster, the morally ambiguous oilman played with raw intensity by Billy Bob Thornton, and Caleb Drake, the self-righteous environmental activist determined to dismantle Buck's empire. Their conflict, a microcosm of the broader struggle between industry and conservation, had escalated to a boiling point. For weeks, viewers watched as Buck's shady deals and ruthless pragmatism clashed with Caleb's idealism, often blurring the lines between hero and villain. The show thrived on this ambiguity, keeping audiences guessing about who would ultimately come out on top, or if either man deserved to. The finale didn't pull its punches. Caleb, driven to the brink by Buck's latest underhanded move, a calculated leak that destroyed a protected wetland, took matters into his own hands. The episode's penultimate scene saw Caleb ambushing Buck at his remote ranch, a shotgun in his trembling hands. Buck, never one to back down, lit a cigarette and coolly invited Caleb to take his shot, daring him to cross the line. What followed was a tense, emotionally charged standoff that showcased Sheridan's knack for crafting dialogue that cuts like a knife. But what made Landman's finale truly resonate wasn't just the confrontation. It was the aftermath. Caleb pulled the trigger, ending Buck's reign with a thunderous blast that echoed across the prairie. It wasn't just a death, it was a reckoning. The camera lingered on Buck's lifeless body, his trademark smirk still faintly etched on his face, as Caleb dropped the shotgun and collapsed to his knees, consumed by the weight of his actions. This wasn't a triumphant moment for Caleb. It was a Pyrrhic victory, leaving him to grapple with the moral cost of his vengeance. The death of Buck Lancaster was everything Yellowstone fans had hoped for in Season 5, but never received. Despite the sprawling Dutton family drama, Yellowstone's 5th season felt strangely inert, as if Sheridan was stalling for time, rather than delivering the decisive blows that had defined earlier seasons. Characters like Jamie Dutton and Beth Dutton circled each other with venomous threats, but never quite landed the knockout punch, leaving their conflict unresolved and viewers unsatisfied. Even the looming shadow of John Dutton's mortality, a storyline teased since the series' inception, remained frustratingly out of reach, with the patriarch surviving yet another season unscathed.